Oh, that is awful. Try some light. That's a little bit better. Oh. All right, guys, it's a rainy Sunday, and the internet is really off. Usually on this channel, if it's a rainy Sunday, it's comic book talk, and there'll be a little bit about that. But this is some low-hanging fruit here, man. I got the closest thing to flannel I still have left and stuff, but we're going back to the 90s and stuff. And we're going to talk about some Kevin Smith movies. Hey, what's up? Home slice. I'm going to assume that's lovingly told. I don't know what that means. That's funny. But anyway, going back to the 90s and stuff, a strange thing happened. Like the summer of 95. Happy Cambodia New Year. Well, happy Cambodia New Year right back to you, man. But going back to 1995 here, a strange thing happened. Back in 1995, I had been everywhere, it felt like, for the last 4 years, and been gone, and I sort of returned home to where I was actually going to stay home. And so I got an apartment, got a little job at a group home where every Tuesday I got to take a bunch of people out to the movies for free. And things like that. And then, of course, being in the early 20s there, and, you know, everybody hung out at my apartment because I had an apartment. I still had friends living with their parents. And, and it was really odd that I had just left a job where I was working at a sawmill making good money, but, I moved on. I was too tired to spend the money. So I took a little bit of a pay cut, and it just cracked me up that everybody hung out at my apartment, and I had the lowest paying job of everybody and stuff, right? And my buddy Nate comes in. Now, Nate and I, we did our White Wolf games back then. Oh, okay. You're decided you're moving to the Philippines in July. Well, good luck with that, man. I hope that goes well. So anyway, Nate comes over, and we've been playing White Wolf games, playing vampire and werewolf and stuff. It was kind of like my apartment was like the center of a spider web for like early 20s drama with everybody, and we'd watch some horrible movies and sit around. We would talk movies and stuff, and then Nate comes in the summer of '95, and he has this VHS tape, and he's like, "You have to watch this." Now, by this time, I am an aficionado of Mystery Science Theater and stuff, and we had already seen some horrible movies and stuff that a lot of them Nate has suggested. And I'm like, no, I'm not watching this. And the other movie that he brought up was Clerks. He gets in here, and it was a VHS tape of Clerks. And I'm like, it's in black and white. And I had this thing about indie movies because they were real pretentious. It was very rare you found one that was actually good. He's like, no, you have to watch this. So we sit down and watch this, and the world changed. The thing about the 90s with their movies and stuff, that you had this big influx of directors come in. Robert Rodriguez, Kevin Smith, Quentin Tarantino. Their movies were kind of being put out there. There was a few more, but there's the ones that most people know. And the Quentin Tarantino movies and the Kevin Smith movies, you kind of found your people because they talked like we did, coming out of the 80s, growing up with pop culture and comic books and movie franchises and all these things like that. And I'm sitting here and I'm watching this, and I can't believe some of the dialogue I'm hearing, and I can't believe some of the stuff that's going on. People just hanging out. It was like us. All they needed was a pool table in here, and it would have been perfect, right? So we watched this. I've never heard about this. And so I'm watching this, and I'm like, now I'm the one sitting there like, call West, call. We were like, I looked at Nate when it was over with. I'm like, call everybody. We start calling people. We need to get them over here. So I'd never heard about this, and this thing came out in 1994. Shot in the actual store that Kevin Smith worked in for around $27,000. He had it himself, wrote it himself, had a few of his friends in there, and got some local actors. And this thing is just hilarious. The Kevin Smith View Askew universe is, to me, embedded in pop culture. The fact that I'm sitting here holding this, I'm sitting here waiting for people to start quoting the movie. You know, give me some movie quotes and stuff from here and stuff, right? So the thing that amazed me about all this was, you know, the wittiness, the observations of life, something that was so cheaply made, and about two guys working in a convenience store in a VHS rental place with two drug dealers hanging out outside, one who didn't speak and one who ran his mouth all the time. And then again, yeah, expand. I was about to get into it in the row, and then it had some raunch in it, you know, but it was smart raunch. It was talking about relationships, and we get the idea of, you know, is oral sex and penetration sex the same, you know? So we came up with the classic 39 in a row. You know, so that was actually the joke in the conversation with Dante's girlfriend about, you know, past sexual experiences that actually maybe fall into love with the movie. Then they turn around and they end up having the Star Wars talk, you know, about the contractors and the you know, the guys that put in the toilet seats in the Death Star. This town is full of savages. Yeah. And the term savage was something my friends and I were already using, and then we ended up adopting a lot of stuff out of this. This town's full of savages, just the attitudes and stuff. This was the 90s. We were known as the Slackers, Generation X, and all this stuff, and it was like our people. So between this, Reservoir Dogs, and you know, Pulp Fiction, it was like these people were talking like we talked. Now it was kind of turned up, you know, all the time and stuff. But we would seriously sit around like on a Sunday night. You know, you can't go out. There's nothing to do. You can go out, but I mean, there was like really nothing to do, and you're dreading work the next day. I worked weekends back then too. So we would actually get a notebook and do this thing where we try to come up with all the movie quotes that we could think of. And we ended up having like a notebook full, going back to movies back to the 30s and stuff. So, and the pop culture references in this stuff. You know, there's always Jaws. He references Jaws a lot. When we get to Mallrats here, we'll talk about that. The Star Wars is a big influence. Running gags in there, and then Bob, Silent Bob, was his big revelations at the end that makes everything make sense. It was about relationships and stuff, cheating, and just everything that goes on. It was just fantastic. The Tarantino outbreak is what really rocked my world. Saw Pulp Fiction 4 times in the theaters. I was so down with Pulp Fiction when as soon as I saw the trailer, I knew what it was. All right, so Clerks comes out. You know, I related to Mr. Blonde big time. Okay. Yep, stuck in the middle. So anyway, then you get in here and there's the soundtrack in here that's just fantastic with this movie. You know, Chewbacca, What a Wookiee. You know, things like that. You look in the background. Rob Ripa's out there. Long time no see, man. Going pretty good. I'm glad you're here. Awesome, man. So, yeah, I'm going to probably go back and forth in these movies. We'll just go through everything that I have here. I've got quite a few things here. Okay, so I see Mallrats. The thing came out a year before. I had never heard of it. The summer of 95, I watched the movie, the VHS tape. I can't find a copy. Nate's the only one that has it. Nate still lived with his mother in his early 20s and stuff, so he had money and cars and he could travel and all this stuff. So he went somewhere way out of town to get it. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting there and I look up and there's a commercial in color for Mallrats, the sequel. There's Jay and Silent Bob in full color, and I'm like, what? No one I knew had any idea what Jay was saying when he went into his noise, noise, noise rhyme. Turned out the local Jersey slang, pack of rats for rolling papers. That's what I mean. It was Jay, some of the stuff that Jay came up with. My favorite song was the Berserker song by the Russian. You know, so you know. But all of a sudden, I'm sitting here and I'm like, "There's a commercial. This movie's coming out in the fall." It was blowing my mind. I'm like, we just watched this. It's like it was sort of like they didn't really exist until I saw the movie, and then they were everywhere, right? And the movie never came around anywhere, but I could go to the movies on Tuesday, like I was talking about. The kid is back on the escalator again. Yes, yes, Oleg. Yes. And he sits there and I'm seeing trailers for the damn movie and it's comic books and there's Stan Lee and I'm recognizing comic book art if you go look at the trailer and I'm just sitting here and I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy. This was the first time where I had a little bit of nerd rage where like my hobby of collecting comics I felt like was about to be exposed to the world, you know. The stink palm. Yeah, would you like a chocolate pretzel? You know. So we come in here and I love this movie when I finally got to watch it. Of course, it was a VHS rental. from Movie Gallery when I finally got to watch it, and it seems like it came out pretty quick. This dude who can't see 3D picture is funny. Yeah, yeah, it's a schooner. It's a schooner. You know, see, and with the comments, I'm glad the comments show up, man. If you watch these movies, you know exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, Michael Roker was in it. Yeah, and he shaved his head in this Mallrats to look like Lex Luthor, since it was so, you know, so much of comic books. And the trick of this movie, no, that's Chase name coming up. I'm getting ahead of myself. So anyway, we come in here and you come in here with this, and again, it's about relationships and video games and the classic line: just because a guy collects comic books, you don't think he can start some shit. You have Brody, who's like one of us, whether we wanted to admit it or not. He's kind of cranked up to 10. You know what I mean? Shannon Doherty was in this, and she was just getting infamous for the way she acted on 90210 and all these things. It was like on the pulse of it. And a lot of the characters will go back to Jaws. You know, we go back to Jaws, and most of the characters are named after characters in Jaws. It had the Star Wars reference where all through the movie, Silent Bob is trying to do the Jedi mind trick and Jay is slapping him. But when did I fall in love with this movie? What is the moment I fell in love with this movie? LaFours. They had this great big huge, like 50-year-old, 6'4", 5, 6, whatever he was, and turned around and you know, he had a straw hat, but he was like built, and they said he had 3 confirmed kills as a security guard for this mall. He's chasing Jay and Silent Bob. Or Brody and Quinn or whatever. He's thrown him out of the mall, and all of a sudden, you know, he just you hear this big clunk, and he falls to his knees, and there's Jay holding a baseball bat, holds it over his head, and he's like, "Kneel, son of Jor-El, kneel before Zod." And I was just, my eyes got that big, you know. I was just like, yes, I wished I could have wrote that. It's so funny, so funny. A bunch of little shots in here, but unfortunately, the thing about this movie is Kevin Smith. Don't listen to the commentary on this. Kevin Smith will sit there and take his own movie apart and tell you what it's bad to where it kind of kills some things. It had a bunch of running gags. We had a gypsy. I even like the part how he compared. There's a lot of subtleties in this. Like there's a comic book shop in the mall where Stan Lee is going to be there. This is 1995, so you know, a much younger Stan Lee, if you will, than what we have. And it was a big deal. And Quentin is not allowed there. He'd been warned by, you know, the mall had warned about Brody coming up. You know, don't let him in. So they end up going to the flea market, and there's a moment where you see comic books at a flea market versus comic books at Steve Date's place or whatever it was in the mall and stuff. Then just so funny, you know, just so funny. You know, get a girl in an uncomfortable place like the back of a Volkswagen. So there's all kinds of little jokes in here that's just fantastic. He even throws homage to like the Wile E. Coyote of trying to sabotage this dating show that's going on in the mall. You know, so that was fantastic. So that bombed. That one bombed. It's a cult classic. People love it. There's talks of a Mallrats sequel that'll probably never happen. So to come back, and I think there's like stuff going on with movie studios. This was picked up like a major movie studio, and Kevin Smith kind of went back to his roots a little bit stuff and got a little bit more indie. And we got to look on the inside of the comic book genre, if you will. The characters make comic books. Great topic. I just watched Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back and Dogma this week. Also Clerks on Laserdisc. Yeah, that's the Laserdisc where he's like, DVDs suck. This is the future. I have something somewhere on one of these DVDs or something where he's like, I'm sorry I said that. I was totally wrong. It was hilarious. Actually, I think it's on a DVD where they use the same commentary that they had on the Laserdisc. It's on, you know, or something. I don't know. But anyway, it's on one of the commentaries in one of these movies where he kind of regrets that. So Chasing Amy was the one where, to me, the mainstream, if you will, fell in love with Chasing Amy because, you know, Kevin Smith started reusing the same actors. He was in love with Ben Affleck, and, you know, he always has been. Apparently, he saw something there. He actually dated Joey Lauren Adams here, so this movie was inspired by his relationship with her. Apparently, she was like a little, I don't know, sex kitten, and Kevin Smith was having some problems because she had experienced so much and he hadn't, so he wrote Chasing Amy. Which is, you know, I got comic books here because the characters in here, these guys make Blunt Man and Chronic. DVD and Laserdisc are like VHS and Beta. I don't know. Laserdiscs are huge. I got about five. I got the Star Wars. I got like I don't know. I got like the widescreen and the regular screen Star Wars movies downstairs, and I got Blade Runner. I got a few of them. They're huge. But he comes in here, and first of all, you know, the hook for a lot of people who've been watching this is that this is people who work in the comic book field. What do they do? Do they go out to the bars and stuff? Kevin Smith is going to answer that because he was a comic book fan. He actually sold his comic book collection to get Clerks made and his car and all kinds of stuff, right? Maxed out a bunch of credit cards. So he sits here, and we come in here, and then we get into the ideas of what love is. Is it gender? I mean, this thing was, you know, really ahead of its time. There have been some movies that kind of touched on this and stuff, but Joey Lauren Adams was basically bisexual, but they were trying to push her like she was a lesbian and can, you know, love conquer, you know, your feelings about what you think you are and stuff like that and everything like that. So there's like a lot of talking here, but see, all this came from the fact that Kevin Smith has a brother that is gay, so he had an understanding way before internet and all the things going on here before of you know, well, you know, these are people. Streets of Philadelphia had been out, things like that. It just kind of touched on a few things, right? That, you know, were not so much taboo back then. By this time we were in the 90s and stuff, but it was just a really good attempt on what was going on then and stuff, right? And no, Chasing Amy's awesome. Chasing Amy's one I highly recommend. But they had Blunt Man and Chronic in this, right? And this would springboard, you know, a few, you know, we start getting references and stuff, right? Let me stop right there. I'm going to show you something I have. Now, the thing about all these movies by Kevin Smith with the View Askew universe, they all start connecting. You start figuring it out by the time you get to Chasing Amy. You pick up a few things of Mallrats going back to Clerks. But the more you watch them, the more you start hearing people sitting around drinking, telling stories about people in this New Jersey town, going back to high school, and you start hearing the same names. You start hearing the references to what was that guy's dog? Oh my God, he's a real person. He's on Comic Book Men. He drew the Batman miniseries with Kevin Smith. Anyway, he had a dog. You start hearing the same stories, the same names, Caitlin Bree and all this stuff, right? He got Caitlin from a TV show I used to watch on PBS that came out of Canada about kids in middle school. It'll probably just dawn on me in a minute. But anyway, if you want to keep things straight, Wizard Magazine ended up putting this out. Okay, this is a Kevin Smith one-shot they put out, and it's all about the View Askew universe. I think this came out around the time Jay and Silent Bob was coming out. Yep. And it sits there and it actually goes through this, interviews people, gives you maps of the town. Degrassi Junior High, thank you. Hey, Frost is out there too. Thanks to Jared Osborne, Degrassi Junior High. I just completely went blank. So that's awesome. So, yeah, we start getting, this came out, yep, Degrassi Junior High was awesome. I watched it. Wills was awesome on it. Her name was Wills. But anyway, so you start getting the characters and the rundown and the names. And they start, you know, they sit there and they let you know how all these movies kind of tie in together and who the stories are and who's related to who. Some fun stuff. They go all the way back to Clerks. They just walk you through all the movies and stuff, right? So this is out there. Wizard Magazine put that. Walt Flanagan's dog. That's it. Walt Flanagan's dog. Gets mentioned a whole lot, you know. It brought out terms that people started ripping off, like finger cuffs and things like that. It was talking about sex. And then you have Jay and Silent Bob kind of being the thread through all these movies and stuff. Okay, so then we come up there, and then what was strange is you were hearing about this movie Dogma. I think going all the way back to Clerks, there at the end of the titles, it said their next movie will probably be Dogma. And they're in the Mallrats, they kind of told you that the next movie was going to be Dogma. And it was this strange little scene of Jay and Silent Bob walking up to a sunset holding an orangutan's hand, you know. And this song coming on by Weezer or something, right? So all of a sudden we get in there, and this was when he made a movie, a film, and stuff like that. Dogma, all about you know, you know, it's all about the religion of dogma and stuff. We come in here and we have like angels coming down, we have hell coming up, we have shit demons, we have goddesses stripping and stuff like that. Selma Hayek, Chris Rock, people were wanting to be in these movies. And right at the beginning of it here, we have Ben Affleck and Matt Damon as two of the main characters. And this was sort of like when they were working, something was going on where they were working on or writing or had just gotten through with Good Will Hunting. And they left the set to go get their Academy Award for their Goodwill Hunting. And it was real awkward on set because they didn't think Kevin Smith, so there's something going on during the filming of this and stuff, right? But this is when we got more and more of Jay and Silent Bob right up front. I'm telling you, that's the one that was bringing in, started getting cameos of people from the last two movies, man. And this was just so smartly written. We get to meet God, and Kevin Smith was raised Catholic, right? So he was really bringing in some stuff that I think Catholics would know. Of course, there were people up in arms and protesting the movie, and Kevin Smith actually went out and protested his own movie on a local news station when people didn't know who he was. So he kind of trolled them. What do you think of Kevin Smith doing DC TV? I know he did something where he directed an episode of Flash last week or something. I got no problem with it. I like the idea of movie directors and stuff coming in and doing an episode of something. It's good publicity. It's a good take. They know what they're doing. I remember when Quentin Tarantino did an episode of CSI where one of the characters got buried alive and ants were coming to get him and stuff, But anyway, so Dogma comes in there, and this was just fantastic. This is, to me, one of his smarter movies. It kind of went back to Clerks a little bit, I think, with his writing style. So I'm assuming he probably had this written and was just waiting till he had the budget or something to really do it. I think he probably had him. I always imagined he had the movie script already ready, So we get in here, and now when did I fall in love with this movie? There's a movie where they were talking about sin, and anyway, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, two archangels or something, and they're riding a bus, and they're going to take out movie. You know what I mean? We're talking about like Judgment Day stuff here and stuff, and there's some running gags in here, but I fell in love with the movie when Matt Damon and Ben Affleck get off a bus, and somewhere along the line they're talking about movies, and they go back to E.T. and Crush Groove, and E.T. beat Crush Groove back in the day, and Matt Damon jumps up there and he's like, "Fuck you, man. Time will tell on that." Huh. Comments disappeared. It'll pop back up in a minute. So there's so much fun stuff in there. Whose house runs out? That's right. Whose house runs out? Yeah, that's it. That's what I mean. There was like little references in there. I was like right there. Tougher than leather, man. Whose house runs house? There's so much fun in this movie. George Carlin popped up in it. That's the law of the road. That's in the book, The Law of the Road. He starts putting in little cameos of the Star Wars in there. We get Princess Leia in here playing a nun. Electric Boogaloo to break it. Yep. So I'm reading comments. It's kind of throwing me off a little bit. It's no big deal, man. But just so fantastic, man. Really good stuff. Oh, it was so good. Anyway, moving on. I'm getting to where I want to watch these, right? So in the midst of all of this, some comic books started coming out, right? Okay, Clerks Clerks the comic book came out. I couldn't believe I was seeing this. I was able to get out and get these. Oni Press. And then we have a lost scene going back to Clerks. Now, if you go back and watch the original Clerks movie, you see them pull up to a funeral home, and then you walk in, cuts, they come out, and they're running out of the funeral home, and everybody's chasing them and throwing things. They're even sliding across the car to get out of there and stuff, right? And this is the movie this is the book that tells you what happened, Clerks, the lost scene. Basically, it was one of Dante's ex-girlfriends, and he dated her. There's a whole talk in Clerks about his past sex life and stuff, the infamous 9 or something like that. Anyway, but what happens is that the girl that died, I think she was swimming or something. She gets referenced in other movies about dying while she's swimming. But Dante got caught eating her out when her parents came home. And they had to leave the church, and they knew his mother, and she got grounded for 2 months or something like that. So they're at her funeral now. And they turn around, and Randall, being Randall, turns around and is like, "Hey, Dante, have you met, Mrs. Dante's the son Dante here?" Or something like that, being real smart. And they just kind of look at him. And his keys drop into her pants. She's laying there dead in the casket. His keys drop. And it's he even references how it's like, they acknowledge as like a 1 in a million shot that it goes down her skirt. So Dante ends up one of them puts her hands down her skirt, trying to get their keys. Something happens, flips the body out, and they're running, to get out of there. So this is the lost scene in Clerks, which is fantastic. Some more double feature came out. I don't know how many of these came out. But I started knowing what was going to happen here because Kevin Smith will always recycle. He doesn't get rid of anything. Kevin Smith came out with a miniseries that he even said this is, where was it? This is between Chasing Amy and Clerks or something like that. Anyway, this miniseries was supposed to go in between the two of them. And I'm reading this, but basically how this starts out is we go back to John Hughes movies. I think I did a live show about a week or two ago about John Hughes movies. But they love John Hughes movies, and Jay and Silent Bob decided it's time to get out of Jersey, and they're going to go find the mythical, town that's in all the John Hughes movies because everybody parties and the girls are loose and all this stuff. And so this is their journey where they get through here. And it was a 4-issue miniseries. Jay and Silent Bob were taking off. I actually ended up buying this when I was at Myrtle Beach for the first or second time or something, right? And they get in there with the fugitive. You see the monkey, what's going on. And Kevin Smith never throws away anything, but he ended up recycling probably like about half of that mini. They meet Mr. Rogers in this. I didn't like what he did. It's probably one of the first things that I didn't like that Kevin Smith did. But it's more about my love for Mr. Rogers than anything. But half of that movie ended up in this. Half of that comic book, that miniseries, ended up in Jay and Bob Strike Back, where we finally get what we've been waiting on. Jay and Silent Bob up front, doing like a Raymond Chandler movie here, where the main plot in this is that you go back to Chasing Amy, where we have Jay and Silent Bob's image being used as Bluntman and Chronic by, Jason Lee and Ben Affleck in Chasing Amy. They were actually getting money to be having their image used, and they're making a movie of Jay and Silent Bob. Yeah. And so they turn around and they're going to stop this damn movie, and they discover the internet. Jay has that classic line of "What the hell is the internet?" And I think there was like something like moviepoopshoot.com that he put in the movie, and it ended up becoming a real movie site talking about movies on the web, that came out of this. And Jay's just all pissed off because he's reading about all the trolls on the internet and stuff. Freaking almost, 17, 18 years and nothing's changed. You know what I mean? People still behave the same way. So they're going to put a stop to the movie because they're not getting any of the movie money. And this is their travels from Jersey all the way out to Hollywood to stop this. And we end up having Mark Hamill in this. This is the one with Carrie Fisher in it. George Carlin pops back up. Dante and all the guys at Dante and stuff, they turn around and end up making cameos. And the more you're into these Kevin Smith movies, the more you start putting things together. And this is supposed to be the end of it, the last of the View Askew movies, the Jay and Silent Bob stuff. And so it had a nice little ending where you, at the end of it, when they come out of the movie theater, you see all these characters from the movies and stuff, if you watched any of this. It was just fantastic, high paced. He went all he went all out a little bit, man. He had cat burglars in this. He has the Scooby Gang in this on weed. They get high and they think the dog's talking and stuff like that, which is just fantastic. So funny, right? So we had more books come out. Mike Allred ended up drawing some Bluntman and Chronics. I think I showed the book a minute ago. You come out with this big collection. This is the comic book that's in the movie. It's all it's all weed related and stuff. You got Mark Hamill playing the Cockknocker. He's got the giant fist where he's a bad guy. The Blunt Cave and all that stuff by the time they get there. Just a lot of funny stuff going on. And it was also around this time that on 9/11, I was working. I'm a social worker, so what happened was is that we had 4 van rides of our clients. We're going to take them to Gatlinburg for a few days, and we went out on 9/11. And that very night, beside my hotel, I go next door to where they have some magazine stuff, because due to 9/11, the streets were clear. Nobody was out. So I'm just kind of walking around where my hotel is, and I look over in this 7-Eleven or something like that, and here's High Times with Jay and Silent Bob on it. So I bought this on 9/11. Go figure. Now, some other movies that kind of came out, before I get to the very last one, some things started coming out, man. You started finding, I think there's 2 or 3 of these now, but this is an interview with Kevin Smith. Somewhere along the line, he started doing college tours. He would just get up there, take questions, tell stories. Jay might show up, Jay might not show up. The thing about Jason Mewes is that he is an addict. So there was times he was going back and forth, having problems with the law and stuff. And Kevin Smith would always motivate him to beat his addiction by saying, I'll write another movie. I'll write another movie. That's kind of where Clerks 2 may or may not have come from. But we started getting stories of him. This is the real Kevin Smith really telling stories. You might get a story behind the scenes of Clerks, or you might get his story about how he worked with Prince and dropped some dimes and stuff like that. Meanwhile, during the 90s, he was helping out his friends to their studio, him and Scott Moisier. Yeah, the Bruce Willis stories are back and forth. So he gets in here, and some indie movies came out with Jason Lee before he was a star. This big skateboarder who'd been in a few. He'd been in a Sonic Youth video or something like that. Comes out there, and there's this movie called Drawing Flies. Another one of Kevin Smith's friends wanted to do it, so he kind of helped him out. There is sort of a Jay and Silent Bob cameo in this, kind of sort of, but Jay plays a whole different character. And basically, this is the search for Bigfoot. So, O'Neill, if you're out there, here's Drawing Flies. This is a hunt for Bigfoot. But basically, there are a bunch of kids in Canada, and I don't know how their welfare system works, but apparently with this, they were, 4 or 5 people were going in. Yeah, catch you later, Jared. And they turn around and, I'm going to end this in a minute. It's starting to rain and it's making me sleepy. So they say here, and, they don't get all of them almost lose their welfare. And he comes around here, and basically he starts having. There's a Scooby Gang. You start realizing this is Blair Witch meets the Scooby Gang looking for Bigfoot, but this came out way before Blair Witch. So this is kind of cool to find if you find it. It's a very low budget movie. It's fun. They also came out with Vulgar. View Askew has this. Their logo sort of is a little kid passing a ball back and forth with this weird clown sitting behind him. And this has the guy that plays Dante in it. It's called Vulgar. And he turns around and, the clown gets raped. That's all there is to it, okay? This is a very dark humor movie. It's one of those things where I say just go watch the trailer because, I don't really, I'm making it sound worse than it is, but it was kind of disturbing to watch back then. It's probably tame now. And then we had this god-awful TV show. Now, I watch it because I love Jay and Silent Bob. I get what they were doing. But I also understand why Kevin Smith hates Family Guy and a few shows if he still does and stuff. Because this show was a sabotage from the beginning. Disney owned ABC. ABC did not show the episodes in order. So they started out with a flashback show that made no sense because it actually flashed back to other episodes of this, that they were in order. It was one of those things that was self-aware, more or less, that it was a TV show. So, it was trying to do pop culture and references and stuff. The only episode I really like is the last one. But I'm not going to lie, it was actually kind of painful. Disney may have wanted to sabotage it, but if you're not a fan of Clerks and these characters and stuff, I don't know if you'll be able to handle it. I'm making it sound worse than it is, but yeah. They're not drug, where it's on TV, Jay and Silent Bob aren't drug dealers, they're firecracker sellers. You can buy illegal fireworks off of them. Do I need to say more? Okay. So years later, we get this thing that comes out. And people were back and forth. I was all for it. We'd already had the 10th and 20th, I don't know, we had the 10th anniversary of Clerks come out. It was getting to where some of the stuff was starting to get mined by Kevin Smith through anniversaries and talk and everything. He came out with a few movies. I don't know, Jersey Girl or something, and I don't know. But anyway, and I have some of those movies, Zack and Miri Make a Porn or something. And we get in here, and then Clerks 2 comes out. Clerks 2, these guys are still at the freaking, working at the Quick Stop. I think this is supposed to be like 10 years later or something, right? And we get all these guys, these people coming back. And it starts out with Clerks. It's in black and white. We're picking right up. We're like, my God, they're still there. And the place burns down. And we get this great opening segue with The Talking Heads, Nothing But Flowers, one of my favorite songs. And we find out a few minutes later they're working at essentially a McDonald's, but it's movies. It's starting to remember we're referencing the View Askew universe and stuff. And this movie was fantastic. Yeah, Rosario Dawson did a really good job in this and stuff, right? And we get the talk of Star Wars versus Lord of the Rings. It was more relevant. Time had come by. The pop culture explosion had kind of happened. More people were into this stuff than there were in the 90s where, it was just different. A lot of stuff went mainstream. Still one of the best movies. Random quote. Whoa. Still one of the best movies for random quotes and strange scenes. One Ring rules them all. Yeah, that's probably when I really fell in love with them. The thing about Kevin Smith movies, I know if I just lay back, he's going to touch on something that's just going to make me fall in love with it. And mine was when he started talking, where he was like, "There's, you know." Now I love Lord of the Rings. Don't get me wrong. I've always loved Lord of the Rings. But to me, Lord of the Rings are the books, and then Star Wars are the movies, going back to the cliffhangers of sci-fi and two different things. I don't. When it comes to the trilogies, I don't think it's fair to compare them. That's where I come from. But he comes in here and he does the classic thing where he's just like, "Oh my God, look at you two rubbing your preciouses." He's like, "There's only one return of, and it's of the Jedi, not the King." And then he walks through all three. Randall sits there and just raises hell on Lord of the Rings to where a fan throws up. I mean, it was just so funny. And you got that one guy sitting there eating his burger, listening to him defend Star Wars, and this guy's just sitting there eating a burger, and he just looks up and he's like, "Fucking A." It just out of the blue. But anyway, it's so much good stuff. A movie scene in this. Um, and then all of a sudden he actually is able to have it almost meant to be why Dante and Randall have been at that store for so long. You know, it's about going into your 40s and it's time to beat somebody and stuff, right? So Kevin Smith had grown since his early 20s. He made these characters grow, and you kind of grew along with them and stuff, right? You know, but it's just so damn funny. King Diamond is in this. Jane Silent Bob at their best. We got some Silence of the Lamb references. It's just so fantastic, man. It's just so much fun. This was so much better than it should have been, you know. So that was just fun back then, right? All right, guys. That's really all I got. I can just sit here, and what's going to happen now is if I keep talking, it's just going to be like talking about the one-liners from the movies, more of the Star Wars talk, more of this, more of that, everything that he put in there. He even had like a Land of the Lost reference in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back that cracked me up with Marshall, Will, and Holly. But I can't stand Will Ferrell, so I'm back and forth with that. And he was in Leestat County, so it's one of those things you can go through and just find stuff that he referenced and wrote that was really cool. All right, guys. Any comments or questions or anything? I'm about to hop off here, man. I need to shower and eat. Oh, thank you again, mate. More knowledge I never do and we'll be looking into. And have a great day. And thanks again. Oh, thank you, man. Appreciate it. All right, guys. I am out of here. Thanks for everybody popped up on there. It is raining like you wouldn't believe now, so I'm really surprised my stream held up. Hit the bell, like, subscribe, and share. And I'll catch you guys later.